Yuck, that's nasty. Picked this up on Marketplace for 250 bucks. And she needs a little bit of help. One of the big things I noticed was a air box was not hooked up to the carburetor, and this thing's been sitting outside for a little while, so hopefully there's not motor or water in the motor, but it does turn over, I promise. So the crank can't be that bad. Really, for the most part, it's all there. We got all the controls, we got the dash little pad here still. It's got the key in it. It's actually got some potential. I mean, it's definitely rough. I mean, it's a $250 four-wheeler, but I'm pretty stoked. Supposedly this thing needs a top end, but I don't know that for sure yet. I haven't checked anything on this. So, I don't know, let's check the oil. You know, you'll have that. There's rust on the dipstick, so I'm assuming there's gotta be some moisture in here. But a lot of these things were bulletproof, so we'll see how bulletproof it actually is. Looks like we got a decompression release right here. Maybe we'll throw a compression tester on this real quick and see if it actually has any compression or not. No way, electric start works. Well, that's a cool bonus, but we ain't got no compression. Well, I might have to agree that it might need a top end. While we're in here, we might as well see if it's got spark. And if the electric start works, why not just crank it over with that, right? That looks good. Got the jumper pack hooked up to it since the starter works, and just for shits and giggles, let's see if it will pop on some carburetor cleaner. Nothing. All right, so I think we're gonna start taking all this apart. Let's see how bad the cylinder actually is. Of course, the second thing I want to take off of this thing is all stripped. That cylinder does not look good. The head doesn't look too bad though. Well, other than the fact that this looks like muddy water in here, and it's all over everything, I would say actually it doesn't seem too bad. There's not really any play in the rod, but this thing is not very healthy. So this looks like more than just a ring job. All right, so I ran into a little issue. When I was first looking up parts for these things, I didn't know what size this was because neither did the other guy. So I found out it's a 200, it says it on here. Come to find out, you can buy lots of cheap Chinese aftermarket cylinders for these Moto 4s. If it's a 225 or 250 or 350, you can find parts. The 200 is different. So another thing I can do is this looks like it's steel sleeved, so I could get this punched out. So I looked on eBay and I can get an oversized piston as long as this one hasn't already been punched out. So when you look it up, they're always in metric. So what we're gonna do is a little conversion. We're gonna take our bore diameter times 25.4, and that's gonna give us our metric size. So I've got a set of calipers here. We're just gonna go in here, try to keep the calipers square with the bore, and it looks like we're at 2-inch 640 thousandths, 67 millimeter bore. This is just a Wiseco piston kit on eBay or on Amazon. It says it's a 0.5 millimeter oversized to 67.5 millimeters. So this is a standard bore. So really, we can send this to the machine shop, get it freshened up, buy an oversized piston, and not have this thing all jerry-rigged to heck. So I might know a guy, and I think we are gonna go get this punched out. I'm gonna order an oversized piston. I'm gonna get a gasket kit for this, And I think we're gonna get into this head a little bit and maybe relap the valves, maybe change the valve seals just to kind of make sure she's good and fresh. Let's get this thing cleaned up. All right guys, so we got our gasket set in, and I had got my piston in. This is 0.5 millimeter over, which is 20 thou. And we sent this to the machine shop to get punched out. So it is beautifully machined and honed. So really there's gonna be almost no prep to this. I do want to scrape a little more of the gaskets off. I got it cleaned up in the parts washer, but I didn't scrape anything before I sent it to the machine shop. Got this on Amazon, I'm pretty sure. I'll put a link for the piston down below. The cylinder is not plated. I don't do many steel sleeves just because a lot of the stuff is Nicosil plated now. It's actually kind of nice. It cost me $50 to get the cylinder punched. Took it to the local machine shop and it was done in a couple days. So that all went pretty well. Got our new circlips, got our piston, our new wrist pin, and our rings. All right, I think what I'm gonna do first is open up this gasket kit, get everything laid out in an organized fashion, and then we're gonna go back over the machine and pull out the old piston that's in it right now. All right, so I'm gonna try to do this with a camera and flashlight in the way. So we gotta get a circlip out so we can tap the pin out of here. I just have a rubber band on this timing chain guide just to keep it out of the way so you guys can see. But I'm just gonna use a pick and go in this little window right here and kind of try to get it wiggled out. All right, I got it started. If you drop this down in the motor, then you're gonna start doing some fishing. So it would be bad if that falls down in there. So make sure you have that out. But now I'm gonna get a hammer and a punch and start tapping this pin out. That's actually one of the easier ones I've done. All right, these 4 strokes don't have any bearings in on the wrist pin. So we got that out of there. I wanna stick the rod all the way down to the bottom so I don't have to dick with it too much. Slide the timing chain down in there. I'm gonna take a rag and kind of pack in this hole to try to keep any of the gasket shavings out of the bottom end. So we got this surface cleaned up, got the bottom there cleaned up pretty decent, and we got that cleaned up pretty good. Next step is we're gonna put the new piston on the rod. We're gonna take some oil and go inside this cylinder, kind of give it a little coat. Now what I want to do is I'm going to stick these 2 bolts in so that that'll kind of hold the cylinder down, and I'm going to roll this over a couple times and make sure nothing's hanging up. And that feels pretty good. I want to leave this thing pretty close to top dead center just so it should be easier to time. We're going to pull the plug out of the case here to actually make sure it's timed, but it should be pretty close. I am done with this, so we are going to drop that back down in. We've got the head here. What I want to do is I want to put new valve seals in it, and I want to relap the valves just because I'm doing a top end, and the top end gasket kit came with valve seals, so we might as well dig into it. Right there's the collar. So now we got the cam out of there. Got the lifters out of there, or the rocker arms. Now our cam's out, so let's start working on the valves. Oh, I'm kind of glad I tore this apart. I don't know if you can see that or not right there, but that is a flat spot on the cam. And that is not good. So this cam is just about wore out. It actually is wore out. I actually don't want to go any farther with this until I go to find a new one. If you kind of look, it looks like it's kind of highest here and it kind of tapers off, where that one's kind of a little more rounded. Even that's kind of starting to show a little wear on it. Kind of a lip on it there. All right, well, I wonder if we can find a cam for this. But regardless, we are going to tear the valves apart. Might as well see if those are any good. now this head is pretty much completely stripped. I'm gonna pop the spark plug out of it quick, and we're gonna scrape this gasket off and get everything cleaned up. This is cleaned up. I got the valves kind of shined up on the wire brush with on the bench grinder, so I'm not too worried about it. I kind of got after it a little bit, got all the carbon off of both the intake and the exhaust valve. This intake valve's got kind of a little bit of like a corrosion ridge starting on it, but we're gonna lap these, so hopefully that's not an issue. But I'm gonna go back to the cam for a second because this is wore out. I wanna try to find another one, Partzilla, and then this is a Yamaha, so I'm gonna shop OEM parts by brand. So Yamaha, then ATV, it's a 1985. Now this is a Moto 4 YFM 200N. I'm gonna go to camshaft and chain. All right, now right there's the cam, and it's got a little number 1. I don't know how well this is gonna show up on the camera, but it looks like they're still available for 85 bucks. So I could buy a brand new OEM one from Yamaha for 85 bucks. But I want to check eBay and see first. Looking right now, the top 3 are like less than 40 bucks, but they're all from China, and I don't feel like waiting that long. I'm not opposed to using a Chinese one. I don't really want to wait months for a cam to come in, so I just filter by in the US. And for a used one here, there's a guy asking 90 bucks. There's another one there for 90 bucks. I mean, I can buy a brand new one for 85, and it's not going to be pre-owned. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is order a brand new cam for this. It's 85 bucks. I've already got the money in a top end for this, and I think this little quad's worth it. So we got everything out and cleaned. I've got this parts washed about as best I can. So what we're going to do now is we are going to lap the valves. I got this cleaned up. It's looking pretty good. I'm gonna do this one more time and then we're gonna call it good. All right, so I just lapped the intake too. The intake doesn't look too bad on the head. I've got a nice kind of gray band all the way around, but the intake valve looks like garbage. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this or not, but it's not even all the way around. It almost looks like there's flakes in it, and there's ridges everywhere. So like if you were to like drag your finger this way, there's like a burr stuck out there, and same with the top out. So like this way here, there's a burr. So this intake valve is shot. So with a junk intake valve and a junk cam, I'm just gonna pause on this for a second. I got a new one of each of those coming. Once they come in, we are going to finish this bad mamma jamma up. So this is the stuff we're going to try to use. I'm pretty sure I picked this up at Walmart. I've used it before on other stuff, but never on plastic. So we're going to see how well this works. Basically, what you do is you take a paintbrush and you just kind of brush this on kind of thick, and you let it sit for a half an hour or an hour, and it should kind of peel the paint off of it. And we've got a lot of stuff that's spray painted on this, all the plastic. I'm not so much worried about the racks, but I'm going to try to get all this flat kind of camo spray paint off of here, because I like the Yamaha blue look better. All right, so I got everything all painted up on this thing. All right, let's see if it did anything. Oh yeah. Kinda. That was about a half an hour or 45 minutes or something, so I'm gonna let it sit on there a little bit longer and see if maybe some more won't come off. So here it is after one coat. Doesn't look too bad. I can't tell how much is staining from the paint and how much it just needs to come back off. What I ended up doing was I just took a bucket with soapy water and a sponge, and I just started kind of going over top of it with the sponge. And it takes a little bit to get that orange stuff off with the sponge. It kind of gets kind of slimy. So you got to kind of rinse it back off in there and kind of like rub the slimy back off of it, and then go back to town and start wiping again. But this is what it looks like after one coat. I think it came out pretty decent. Wow, this is probably one of the worst carburetors I have had apart in a couple of years. I'm gonna get some of this heavy stuff off of here with a rag first. All right, right now I just kind of have everything soaking in this float bowl with carburetor cleaner just because this was in such bad shape. Most of the time just a good spray out with a carburetor cleaner and just a little bit of scraping works pretty good. So there's our fuel screw. Now way down in there should be some more parts. I'm just taking a little pick. There's an O-ring in there. That makes me nervous because fuel screws usually have a spring, a steel washer, and then an O-ring. And this literally just has an O-ring. You can see this is what it's supposed to have in there. The fuel screw, the spring, the washer, and the O-ring. And all this white crusty stuff, I'm going to take a flathead screwdriver, kind of start trying to scrape that away. So I've got a lot of this cleaned up now. This carburetor bowl was absolutely disgusting. I might get 1 out of every 75 carbs are probably this bad. I guess it depends on what kind of junk you're into. Sometimes I get some stuff in that's really bad like this. But I scrubbed it as good as I could and it still wasn't good enough for me. So I stuck this in sandblaster and shot some sprayed out in here a little bit to just get it cleaned up. So I do have the float bowl cleaned up now. I took the float itself and sprayed some carburetor cleaner on a rag and wiped that off. I've got these metal pieces cleaned up and I've got all my jets cleaned up. I like to use, this is just an electric die grinder, but this is a super fine wire wheel. This works super good for cleaning up this fine brass pieces and it kind of gives it a good polish. So I've got everything on the outside cleaned up really good. And I've sprayed out the inside of everything. It looks pretty decent. One thing I noticed while I was doing this is the tip of this needle here. I don't know how well you can see that. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up or not. So I drew you guys a fancy picture. All right, so this is what my needle looks like right now. It's kind of got this weird step in the rubber tip and it's not supposed to look like that. A brand new one's got a nice, crisp, clean V in it. Because it's got that weird curved in tip, it is not any good. All of the rubber on this particular carburetor is completely shot. I'm gonna put a new carburetor kit in this. I've gotta get all new O-rings and stuff. Alright guys, new parts came in. I got a new intake valve. I ended up buying new rocker arms because the old rocker arm, the side that cam had eaten up, just looks super bad. And these weren't that expensive. I'm pretty sure I got them on eBay. So it's gonna have new rocker arms. It's gonna have a new intake valve. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I wanna lap this new intake valve in just to make sure that it's gonna seat well. So I'm just gonna do that quick off camera. Alright, so now we've got a nice gray band around there. And we still have a nice gray band in here. That's pretty much it, I think. I think right now we're gonna be ready to put this back together. All right, well that's in. The only other thing here really is I see a hole there and I see a notch there. So there's a little pin right there. So the new cam did not come with a new little pin. I get to use my little pliers again. Okay. I guess it's probably gonna be easiest now to set the valve flash while it's on the bench. It looks like maybe there's a 10 millimeter and then an itty bitty little guy. It looks like 2 to 4 thou on the intake and 4 to 6 on the exhaust. 3 goes, 4 doesn't. We're gonna go to the exhaust and kind of try to do the same thing. 4 goes pretty easy, 5 goes, 6 doesn't go. Sweet. I think we are ready to put this back on the motor. Oh shit, I'm a dummy. I should not have put that cam sprocket on there yet. Oh well, I'm not a professional. Alright, so I'm assuming this down here is gonna be super nasty. I'm assuming this is the drain plug on this because it's really big and it's kind of towards the bottom of the motor. Yuck. Well, the little screen doesn't really have like any big metal chunks or anything in it, so we're definitely gonna flush the oil on this once we get it running. We're gonna put fresh oil in it, run it, get a couple heat cycles in on this set of piston rings, and then we're gonna dump the oil out of it and put more fresh oil in it. So I didn't realize there was an oil filter on this, but we're gonna attempt to take this off and see if there's an oil filter under it. That's nasty. Yuck. I'm gonna try to clean that out. Maybe clean this in parts washer and kind of scoop some of that out so it's fresher. But the only way to get this out is to run it. So we're just gonna kind of clean it up the best we can and then run it, and then hopefully it kind of clears up after this next oil change. This poor wheeler. Now basically what we need to do, we need to get to the bottom of this chain, which is way down in there. So that means this recoil is gonna have to come off, and then probably this case cover here is gonna have to come off, and then the cam sprocket's gonna have to get pulled off too. Let's start with probably the shifter, actually. We're gonna have to pull this cover off now. So it looks like we got a big bolt here, and then looks like another Phillips head here. Looks like there's a bolt here, here, here. All right, so there's lots of tricky bolts in here, and they're all Phillips heads. So we might end up getting out the impact screwdriver, but let's get this off first. Well, I was not expecting this to be this hard. Oh, okay. Wow. Holy shit. All right, that was definitely snug. Now we're gonna get the impact screwdriver because I don't even want to dick around with stripping out an Allen head. If you've never used one of these, I highly recommend it. Basically you just hit it with a hammer right here and it'll twist. So that's how you break stuff loose. All right, I think that's all of them broke free. All right, so we got that off, but that was kind of a pain in the butt. Let me show you. I've got this Harbor Freight flywheel puller kit, this thing. And I ended up using these two bolts here, but I needed a third one, so I had to go visit the old man and get one more bolt, and then it was a little bit shorter than these two, so I had to kind of shim these two. But if you're gonna end up using a flywheel puller, a 3-bolt flywheel puller to get in there, it threads into the back there on the flywheel, and then you just run the bolt in and it pops off. I guess we're gonna start with this here. All right, whenever you pull something off, make sure there's not a shim that's stuck to the case. All right, so this big gear won't come off unless I get this keyway off. Might have to do a little tappy tap on that. All right, that key was pretty tight. All right, so I'm gonna pull this big gear off. All right, there is a washer in there, but I'm gonna try to leave it. I'm gonna be aware of it, but I'm gonna leave it. So that is the sprocket that we need. All right, so now we're gonna pop this off. And we're gonna pop the chain off it. So now it's kind of laying in a pile down here. We're just gonna try to work it off. There we go. All right, so you gotta be gentle and take your time, but that's how much play is in that timing chain. Droops down pretty good. All right, so that's a new one. So that definitely seems better. Now, probably what I'm gonna need is a magnet. I'm gonna try to get this in here and get it started. All right, get most all of this fed up in there. There we go. Okay, so that went on just pretty easy. All right, so kind of get it started, get it fished up through first, and then we'll kind of walk right around that fairly easy. So I don't have a gasket for this, so I got all the old gaskets scraped off of all of that, and then I scraped all the gasket off of this, and then I used some Yama Bond, and I just did the old tap, tap, taparoo all the way around. Let's get some bolts in it now, I guess. If your bolts are nasty like mine, probably try to clean them up before you do all that Yama Bond. I didn't think about it, but now I'm trying to wipe them off quick before that Yama Bond starts to set up. So I'm gonna kind of get that in there. Make sure teeth are lined up. All right, so right here is our mark for our timing. What I want to do is kind of take this, make sure I'm on my sprocket all the way down there, and I'm going to kind of hold it nice and even, and I can kind of see what link is going to be where my timing mark should be. So it looks like probably right here is where my mark should be. So what I'm going to do is try to not lose that and try to stick that in there. And if nothing else, it'll get me close. At least then I'll know if I need to only move it a tooth or so. All right, so what I want to do also is I want to simulate the chain tensioner. So I'm going to take something like a screwdriver and stick in the timing chain tensioner slot and push on it. It should simulate what it looks like with a timing chain in there. So like if I let off on the screwdriver, it'll twist. And that timing mark looks pretty dang close to that. I'm gonna make sure this is tight, so I'm gonna give this a couple quick ugga-duggas, and then I'm gonna put the shifter back on with the plug, and then we're gonna put the timing chain tensioner in. All right, so I got that bolt in and tight, and the timing chain tensioner. So you wanna thread this piece here in until that center stem is about flush with the top of that, and then we're gonna tighten this jam nut down. After that, we're just gonna snug that plastic cap back on. Then we're gonna pop this cover back on, put our drain plug back in, and put the oil filter in on the other side, top her off with oil, and we're gonna get this thing fired up. I purposely left this cap off because I want to fill the oil through that. If you look at the case right here, it says 1500 cc's, so that's a quart and a half. So I'm probably gonna put a quart in the motor through this, and then we'll finish putting the other half a quart through here. But because everything in here is dry, and if it's not new, it's clean, so there's not any oil on anything in there. So what I want to do is pour some and kind of get everything wet in here by flooding it with a quart of oil. It's all going to go down anyways, so I'm going to start from up there, and then we'll put the last half a quart in there. And then I'm gonna go dump this in my waste oil. All right, so because the tank's gonna go on, I wanna button up some of the gas lines and choke cable and breather vent hoses and stuff. So, all right, we're not gonna put a ton of gas in it just because I'm gonna have to order a new petcock. I'm gonna put enough in it to go ride it. Man, this thing's fun. Woo! Well guys, there you have it. That's all it took to get this thing up and running again. Looking back on it now, I don't think it necessarily needed piston and rings. I think the cam was the big issue between the cam and that valve. I think the valve was not letting it build compression, and the cam being wore out just wasn't letting it fire anyways. So, but she's got a fresh top end in it, new timing chain. It's actually not a bad running little wheeler. I'm thinking because this little quad's really not that bad. I mean, it's not all broke up. The plastics are pretty solid. They're definitely not perfect. Like this shroud right here is kind of chunked out here and broke there. But other than that, really everything's pretty solid on this. I think we're gonna restore this. I think we're gonna strip this thing all the way down. We're gonna paint the frame, tear the motor all the way apart, and repaint the cases and repolish the middle set of cases, repaint the rims. I think we're gonna go completely over this and try to do a really nice job on this quad. The racks aren't all bent to crap. The back rack's a little boogered up, but I might try to see if I can make that look a little better. New seat cover, obviously. See if we can bring this plastic back to life. All right, I hope you guys liked this. If you did, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button, and keep your eyes out for the restoration video on this. But till next time, peace.